Hello again, I'm Doug Smith, and this is the 12 June 2015 edition of Portsmouth This Week, the voice of Portsmouth Town Hall. Our guest today is Portsmouth Animal Control Officer Ariel Fisher.
Hi.
Ariel, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
It's been kind of some time since you were last in the program. I wonder if we could start by maybe discussing your job, what you do on a typical day.
Sure. So for the most part, when I come in the morning, I'm checking voicemails, emails from either complaints or residents with concerns. And then I spend the majority of my day out on the road. I have to patrol the entire town, mostly for loose dogs, stray cats, those kinds of things. I spend a lot of time at Glen Park, Gardner 70. People tend to let their dogs run loose over there. So I spend some time there. And then if I do find an animal, either a citizen finds it or I find it, I pick it up and transport it to the Potter League, and then it remains there until the owner comes to pick it up.
Okay. And are you on some kind of shift, or do you just work like normal working hours?
It's Monday through Friday, 8 to 3.
Okay.
But I am called in occasionally for overtime if needed.
Now, as I recall from the last time we spoke on this program, you've got some pretty good training and background for this job. I wonder if you could discuss that for a second.
Sure. I started out working in animal shelters, so I've worked in 3 different shelters. So that's where I got most of my animal care experience. And then I am also certified as an animal cruelty investigator and an equine cruelty investigator through a law enforcement training institute. So it's a national certification. I took classes all over the country, and it can be used in any state in the country.
Well, that's great. And you live nearby, so it's a pretty good fit, I think.
It is. It's only a 15-20 minute commute. So.
Yeah. Now, you're part of the police force, so I assume you report to Chief Lee, ultimately.
Sure. I technically work out of the police station. I am considered a town employee, though.
Okay.
So I do report to the chief and deputy chief, and then I have my lieutenants as well.
Okay. I know you have a vehicle of some kind that you use. Do you have anything, other tools or anything that you've got for?
Sure. I have cat carriers, leashes, treats, the normal things to get animals. I always say that treats are the most important thing. That's how I catch all my dogs. And then I have a catch pole if needed. I have a net, cat traps if I need them.
Yeah.
And then little things, gloves, trash bags, those kinds of things.
And when you approach a stray dog, walking along or something, are they usually pretty friendly, or?
It depends. I've had a few that aren't very friendly or that are scared.
Yeah.
Most of the time it's just fear when they're not super friendly. So sometimes it takes a little bit of extra time to kind of catch them, but treats really do the trick.
Really, yeah. It would work with my dogs,
Yeah.
I'll tell you that. We have a strong leash law here in Portsmouth, and I just wondered, all of our dogs are required to be licensed, so do we have a number of dogs that we know we have?
Right now we have about 1,600 registered dogs in Portsmouth.
Wow. That's quite a few, I guess. Regarding the leash law, what does this mean? You basically can't let your dog off the leash in public places?
Correct. Off of your privately owned property, the dog has to be on a leash, and it has to be controlled by a person. It can't be an electric leash or something like that, and a small child can't be, just walking the dog.
Yeah.
So it has to be controlled by an adult.
Now, so there's basically no place in town right now where a dog can be let off a leash.
No.
I have one of the problems is when you get new neighbors and they're walking their dog with no leash, and you try to be nice and tell them, we have strict leash laws in this town. And one of the answers I've gotten from one person at least was, I've got this electronic collar that's been approved by everybody.
Right.
And I'm saying, what?
No. I mean, it certainly hasn't been approved by me.
Well, and Chief Lee doesn't know about it either.
No. And town ordinance clearly states that it has to be a physical leash. So.
Yeah. Now, is enforcing this law about the leash law difficult?
It is. Only because people tend to get angry. when I enforce it, especially in places like Glen Park and Garner 70, because they think, oh, there's so much open space, I can just let my dog run loose. It's not just that there's a leash law that needs to be followed, but it's also a concern for safety. People tend to think that because their dog is great with people and great with dogs, that everyone's dog is like that, and they're not. We've had a couple instances where somebody has a dog-aggressive dog, and they are walking this dog on leash, and they're being responsible, and then somebody's dog comes and runs up, and then there's a dog fight.
Yeah.
Obviously, the person with the dog-aggressive dog who's being responsible and has their dog on leash is going to get angry about that. So people need to understand that just because their dog is friendly, it doesn't mean that everybody's dog is friendly.
And dogs have personalities too.
Exactly.
It's interesting. One of my neighbors has a golden that was a dog that she got from a shelter down in New Orleans during the hurricane down there, or after that. And she's a very docile, beautiful dog. But there's one dog that when the dog walks up the street, this young lady would like to go out. I don't know what it is. It's something in the air. But she just changes overnight from being a nice animal to being very aggressive. And I can see why that could happen.
Yeah, it can definitely be a huge problem, especially because animals are unpredictable. You can have the nicest dog on the planet who's never bit a person, never bit a dog, never had an issue, and they can bite a person or they can bite a dog, you know?
Yeah.
They can't talk, so there's no way for them to tell us, okay, we're uncomfortable right now and we're going to bite, you know? People need to really pay attention to body language, but most dog owners don't know basic body language, so they miss all of these signs that their dogs are clearly giving them, and then that's when something usually happens.
Yeah. Yeah, I know when my Border Collie, her ears go down, and you can tell that she's anxious about something. So this is a tough law. We have a lot of territory in Portsmouth. Can people help with this thing? I mean, should they report stray animals to you?
Yes, they should. A big issue I have is I get voicemails from people saying that on Tuesday at 4 p.m. there was dogs running loose at Glen Park. Well, okay, thank you, but I can't, unless I'm actually seeing it or I have a written report saying that this is happening, there's not a lot that I can do. So people tend to call me after the fact if they call the police station when it's happening, I can get dispatched out there and actually deal with the problem as it's happening.
Yeah, because otherwise you won't even know whose dog it is.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. Another question, I just wondered if there are any restrictions in our regulations or laws about the number of dogs you can have in a house.
There is. In Portsmouth, you're only allowed 3 dogs in a household. However, I do have the authority to give permission to people to have more than 3 dogs. I have a few families in town that do have more, and it's because they're responsible dog owners. If I were to have complaints about them that the dogs are running loose or they're not licensed or they're barking, then I would definitely take away that permission and they would no longer be allowed to have more than 3.
Yeah, so if they're pretty much kept in a backyard environment, they're okay probably.
Right.
I just wonder, how is this enforced? Of course, you guys get the licenses.
So when they go to license the dogs at Town Hall, if they're trying to license more than 3, Town Hall will direct them to me and will not license any of their dogs until they speak with me and get permission to have more than 3.
So that gives you a relatively quick and easy way to enforce that law. What about other animals? Things like pythons, snakes, and maybe even what I would call exotic, but maybe aren't. But as you say, there's no law against iguanas in the town.
Yeah, there's
like monkeys and weirdo kind of animals.
Right. There is a town ordinance, again, it's exotic animals. People cannot have them in their home. And there's also a lot of state laws that regulate what can and cannot be brought over from other countries or even across state lines. Most animals have to be registered with the Department of Health. But in Portsmouth, we can't have monkeys and lions and tigers in your backyard. As far as, small snakes and lizards, those aren't really regulated. And, an iguana isn't technically considered an exotic animal. So
it's pretty exotic to me.
Right.
I'm not so concerned about it. In fact, I'm just being silly because I know these pet pythons things, they lay around and slither.
Yeah.
They don't really hurt anybody.
Right. It's only when people let them loose that they can become a problem.
Yeah.
Because they will grow to their environment. So if they're left outside, they can get pretty large.
Now, but these things don't need to be licensed, so
Correct.
there's no registration requirement, right?
There's some that the state requires, but that depends on, where
Yeah.
the animal came from.
No, but you would get a copy of that or
Correct.
something, right?
Yep,
from the
they would
state?
contact me and let me know.
One of the programs that you started recently that the chief particularly wanted us to discuss was the spay and neutering program.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could talk about that, because that's very interesting.
It's very exciting. I'm really happy that we finally started this. Spay and neuter is so important for so many reasons. The biggest one being overpopulation. We have hundreds of thousands of animals in shelters that are being euthanized daily, all because people can't spay and neuter their animals. And a lot of the time it's the cost.
Yeah.
It can be costly to have a female spayed. It can be upwards of $300. And a lot of people just don't have that
Are we
extra
talking
money.
about dogs and cats?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. So cats are usually a little less expensive, and a neuter is less expensive. There are options out there, but unless you're really doing your research, you don't know. Most people just call their vet, and their vet says, okay, it's $250, and they say, well, I can't afford it, I'm not going to get it done. So as well as the overpopulation, it's also a health concern. Unneutered male dogs that can cause aggression and behavioral issues, as well as it increases the risk of cancer by up to 80%.
Really? Mm-hmm. Wow.
So it's so important. So we're working with the Rhode Island Community Spay Neuter Clinic in Warwick. They're an amazing organization, and they just do spay and neuter. That's the only thing they do all day, every day. They have dogs and cats in and out doing spay and neuter.
Now, what is this again? What's the name of it?
The
Warwick?
Rhode Island Community Spay Neuter Clinic.
Okay.
And
That's interesting, because are their rates lower than?
Yep, so they are already a low-cost spay neuter clinic. And then Portsmouth we have a deal with them, so we have a spay neuter fund for the town of Portsmouth. So we are covering, I believe, $100 towards the spay and neuter for dogs and $50 for cats. So
Okay.
cats end up being only $25 just to get them spayed or neutered. The dogs, it depends on their weight.
Yeah.
So I can't give you exact prices for that.
Okay, but that's a fund that you've established, like in the police department?
It's a state law that when you get your dogs licensed, $1 from whatever the fee is goes into a spay-neuter fund.
Okay.
So our town does that. So every year, we have about 1,600 dogs that are getting licensed,
Right.
and $1 from that goes into the spay-neuter fund. So we had some money put aside we were able
That's
to
very
use.
clever. It's a good way to do this thing. The chief was saying that that the spaying and neutering is free for people over 60
It
people
is,
over
yes.
65 to take their pets.
Correct.
I'm not saying we're spaying or neutering people. over
No,
65.
yes, over 65. And if they have any kind of difficulty paying, at this point we really just want to get the animal spayed or neutered.
Yeah.
So we want to work with people as much as possible. So if they can afford $25, then we would like to at least get their animal spayed and neutered,
Yeah, that reminds me of another animal that I missed coming through here. But what about rabbits? I mean, there's a lot of wild rabbits around here, and they're fine. They pop up in the yard. But are there any issues that you have with any rabbits? Have we seen any rabid rabbits or anything like that?
No, I've never gotten any calls
Okay.
for that.
So I guess my dog will continue to chase this guy and never catch him. That's what
Yeah.
happens. So this is a really great program. I went on the website and went into the police department and went into the animal control section. I didn't see anything on there. Is that spay and neutering program?
It may not have been added to the actual animal control part of the website. However, it has been posted on Facebook. We've done
Okay.
a newspaper ad that runs every week, I believe, in the Portsmouth Times, as well as we have flyers that have been put up.
Okay.
So we've received a lot of phone calls for people
Yeah.
inquiring about it. It seems to be picking up.
Now, how can people find out more information about this program? They call you, or?
They can call me. At this point, we're asking that people contact the Spay Neuter Clinic because they're handling all of the appointments. They can help with transport, anything like that.
Okay.
I have had a couple people call me, and I basically just give them the number for the Spay Neuter Clinic.
Okay, you don't know what that number is.
I
so-
do, yes.
Okay, what is it? We'll just put it out here.
Sure, it's 369-7297.
7297, okay. So 369-7297, that's the spay and neutering clinic.
Yep, and if they call, just say that they're a Portsmouth resident, and the people there will get them all settled with an appointment.
Okay, that's great. One of the good reasons for having, for putting stuff like that, information about that program on the website, is that it's always there. People can always go to it
Right.
when they want to look it up.
I think the only issue with that is that eventually we are going to run out of money.
Yeah.
So having something as permanent, permanently up there, it could be an issue, which is why we just continue to post it on our Facebook page so people know about it.
Well, yeah, I'm wondering if maybe if you had it up there, they could at least call, put something here about calling you first or something. Or something
Well,
like that.
we're trying to sort of avoid that only because I'm not in the office a lot. I spend the majority of my day out on the road, and as it is, I'm getting 10 to 15 voicemails a day. So if I'm getting my regular voicemails plus even more that I'm having to call back for the spay-neuter clinic when they can just call the clinic directly,
Right.
that seems to be working out easier.
Now, how much money is in the fund now? I mean,
I'm actually not sure what we have right now. We had a good amount to begin with. Our finance guy is the one who handles all of that.
Jim's really smart as a time.
Yeah, he's been so
he'll figure
great.
out ways,
Yep.
Well, that's great, and I think our residents certainly should try to take advantage of that.
Yes, they really, really should.
So people can call you, and you can give them the information over the phone, or they can call that spay and neuter clinic directly. Okay, super. One of our animal, what I consider to be an animal control issue, is in Portsmouth is coyotes wandering around, and I understand a lot of people feel, and I guess when I think about it, I feel too that that's just natural. They're wild animals; they're just
Right.
rolling around the territory.
Right.
These are supposed to be DEM's problem technically, but for example, in my neighborhood, we have had several recent sightings. Again, all these were just like the coyote walking by or something,
Right.
Nothing about, nobody has seen them eat a cat or
Right.
anything like that,
Right.
nothing bad. But my neighborhood is kind of concerned because we have a lot of animals, we have a lot of kids, small kids, and I guess the question is, what should people do if they see a coyote?
Okay.
And then what should they do if they see a coyote that may be acting weirdly?
So actually seeing a coyote, there's really nothing that you can do. It's just kind of look at it as seeing a rabbit or seeing a bird. If you see a coyote on your front porch, call the police department.
Before you walk out.
Exactly. And just stay away from them. That's the biggest issue. People tend to think that they're just like dogs, and they're not. They're wild animals, and if they feel threatened, they can attack. Most of the time they will run. That's just how they're built. They're built to fear humans, but we do have an issue with a couple coyotes in town that have lost fear of humans. So the other big thing is any attractant, any kind of food, trash, anything like that that's going to bring them to your yard. If they know it's there, they're going to keep coming there. So if you don't want them there, you need to make sure that there's nothing around that could
So definitely
consume
don't
this food.
feed them. You may
Absolutely
feel sorry
not.
for them, but
Correct. First of all, they don't need the food. They will find their own food. They have for as long as they've been on the island. And there's also a town ordinance against it because we are trying to prevent them from losing fear of humans. We want them to be afraid
that's
of
probably
us.
how they lost their fear, was somebody feeding them.
That's
right?
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So people tend to think that, they're just like dogs and they're friendly and we can just give them food, and that's just not the case. They can be dangerous, and they are large wild animals, so it's better to just leave them alone.
Do we have any sense at all of how many of these we may have in Portsmouth? Just a ballpark figure.
Well, they travel all over the island, so they can travel up to 40 miles in one day. So I can't necessarily say Portsmouth has a certain amount, but I believe there are about 40 total on the island.
On the island, okay.
Yes, so there are different packs, and there are some coyotes that live kind of on their own and not part of a pack, so it's kind of difficult to give an exact number.
Yeah. Is there a breeding season for them?
Yeah, it's like most animals. During the springtime is when they start having their puppies. And people are seeing a lot of them out during the daytime. It seems more now. I think a lot of that has to do with the awful winter that we had.
Oh, yeah.
There was not a lot of food for a lot of animals. So at this
So a lot of
point,
those
they're
puppies
just trying.
died.
Yes,
Yeah.
and at this point, they're just trying to find food.
Yeah.
Fortunately, sometimes it's your cat or your dog. You just have to be super careful. If you have a cat or if you have a small dog, watch them. Don't let your cats outside, especially at night.
Yeah.
Don't let your dog just out on a leash, because they will come and they'll take them. They don't differentiate, oh, this is Fluffy, a pet dog, They say this is dinner, and that's
Yeah.
it. So you just have to be really cautious.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the program somewhere on the island where they actually hired a hunter to come in and kill some of these things. And it didn't work out very well, right?
Correct. It doesn't necessarily work out for a couple of reasons. I don't know a lot about wild animals. The information that I'm getting, I get mainly from a website called Coyote Smarts, and a biologist that I work with, Numi Mitchell. So basically the way she explained it is coyotes can control the amount of puppies they have in a litter. So if we have a hunter that comes in and kills 12 puppies, the next season that mom is going to have 24 puppies to make up for the 12 and then some, because she feels that she's being threatened and they need more in the pack.
So it's almost counterproductive to
It
try
is.
to kill
It
them unless you
absolutely
kill
is.
them all.
Right, unless you're going to kill every single one, which is, I mean, is almost impossible to get every single one.
Yeah.
Then it really doesn't do anything. Because, you know, now if they don't have as much food available to them, they're also going to control their puppies. So if they can't feed them all, they're not going to have a lot. So basically we just need to be limiting their food. Obviously if they're still around and they're killing all these rabbits and squirrels and skunks, eventually it's going to go down. So the population will kind of even out.
Yeah. Now, you were talking earlier about what our biologist plans to do here in Portsmouth. Could you explain that?
Sure. She has a trapping program. So she has a GPS collar. She traps the coyotes and then puts the collar on them and re-releases them. This way she can kind of track where they are. And it's really good because if they tend to be in one specific location, especially a neighborhood, that usually says that somebody is feeding them. So at that point, we can get a location down to the exact address. And we can go to the people and say, hey, just so you know, we have a lot of
You got a
coyote
coyote
activity
in your
here.
backyard, yeah.
Are you feeding? Are you leaving trash out?
Yeah,
You
good
know,
point.
anything like that. And if they are, I can explain the ordinance. And there is a fine. If they continue to do it, which we'll be able to tell via the GPS, then there's a fine.
Now, has she already started that program? Or is this like an ongoing thing?
We just purchased a collar. So she's going to be starting, I believe, this weekend doing the trapping. So we'll have more information after
We
that.
only have one collar?
Yes.
Oh, you're
Yeah,
kidding.
they're very, very expensive.
Really?
So we just have the one right now.
All right. Well, I hope we can get one of those two bad guys.
That's what we're
that'd be
hoping.
nice. Interesting problem, and I think it's going to be. I don't know if there's any long-term solution. The thing is, when you think about it, we think it's cute that deer are all over the place, but coyotes, we somehow. Of course, that's because they eat our pets. I guess.
Right. I think
probably,
right. It's just because they're predators, you know.
Yeah. So there really isn't any long-term solution in terms of, unless you wiped out the entire population,
Exactly.
which would be very difficult.
Right.
Shifting subjects, we're now in the hurricane season. I know on your website, on your animal control page, you discuss a lot of stuff about what owners should do to prepare for emergencies, particularly if they have to evacuate.
Right.
Okay, you want to discuss some of that?
Sure. I mean, being prepared is the biggest thing. You need to be able to have food and some sort of transportation for every animal that you own. So I have 2 dogs and I have 3 cats. So I have 3 cat carriers and I have 2 dog crates. I don't need them. I don't use them all the time, but I have them in case for some reason we had to.
Yeah.
You know, the issue usually comes where the storm comes and people need to evacuate and they don't have a cat carrier. And then they end up having to leave their cat behind, and then the cat either gets killed or it gets lost or something like that. Being prepared is the most important thing. And then having food set aside.
Yeah.
You know, having just a bag of food that you use every single day is not enough. Even if it's just a little bag that you can have just set aside,
Yeah.
it
Probably
really
for a
makes
couple
a difference.
days is what you
Exactly, just a
need
couple
anyway.
days worth.
And the thing is, you can't take these animals to the shelters, though, right? Or can you?
So Potter Shelter, the issue with that is they do have an auditorium and they will set up crates for dogs. However,
Okay, that's Potter, right?
Correct,
I'm
yes.
thinking of the people's shelters.
oh,
the Red
people's
Cross
shelters, no. Most of them do not allow animals.
Yeah, I know several years ago when the Portsmouth High School was our shelter, primary shelter, we allowed people to bring animals in crates and we put them in a hallway somewhere.
Right.
But you can't do that anymore, I guess.
Right.
So Potter's the best shot.
Yes and no. So they have the space available and they will help as much as they can. However, people aren't staying there. There's not staff there watching your animals.
Yeah.
So, you know, they're being brought there, they're in crates, they're given food, they're given water, but then the people have to get home because they have to remain safe as well. So they'll come back in the morning as soon as they can, but there's nobody there
At the
actually
Potter
watching
shelter,
them.
yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Gee, that's interesting. What's the other option for somebody that's got to move out? and let's say they can take their animals with them.
Mm-hmm.
What else should they look for? Are there hotels or motels that allow dogs and pets?
Yeah, I mean, there are definitely pet-friendly hotels and motels. That's something that you would just have to be prepared for. You know, you should have these
Know
before,
where they are,
right?
yeah.
Know where they are, know what your options are before something happens.
Yeah. The other way to do it, particularly in Rhode Island, where everybody seems related to everybody else, is to find another family that's outside of the
Right.
evacuation zone that you
Right.
can go and stay with for a while. Yeah. Well, that's good information. I encourage people to go to, it's under the town website, and you click on police, go to the animal control section, and you'll see a lot of good information, I think, about preparing for this stuff. One of the final questions, we're getting down to the last couple of minutes here, but what can the public do to make your job easier?
Two huge things. The number one, and I believe I mentioned this last time I was here, is vaccinate. Vaccinate your animals for rabies.
Yeah.
People don't realize the state laws that go along with rabies vaccinations. So right now I have 2 6-month quarantines. Now, luckily, because of the situation, the people have been able to do these quarantines at home, but that's not always the case. So that means that your dog is taken away from you, or your cat is taken away from you, and brought into a shelter for 6 months with no human contact.
Now, this is because a rabbit,
Yep, some sort of, yep, but
So-
it doesn't even have to be a bite, it's any kind of exposure. So if your animal is not vaccinated, not up to date, it can be up to a 6-month quarantine.
Well, isn't the requirement for a license, you have to show your,
It is,
your
yes.
vaccination
But
thing?
we don't have a license for cats, and people who don't license their dogs don't necessarily have to have them vaccinated. So it's super, super important.
Do you think there are really many people that don't register their dogs
Yes.
in Portsmouth?
Oh,
Really?
absolutely. Yep.
Wow.
Because a lot of the dogs that I pick up aren't licensed, and I have to get in touch with the owner, and they have to get the dog licensed.
So this is definitely public safety issues
absolutely
here.
100%.
Yeah. And that's the best they can do. They can't tell whether they have rabies by some kind of
No, the
blood
only
test?
test is via the brain, which means the animal has to be decapitated in order to get to it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That sounds tough.
it is.
What's the other?
Leash your dogs.
Leash,
Please, please,
yeah.
please. I've had way too many dog bites, way too many incidents just because of dogs aren't being leashed. I understand that people want to run their dogs, but they have extendable leashes that I allow people to use. You know, you can do it, just do it responsibly. But
So those extendable leashes with the long cord that goes out are okay.
yeah, to a certain extent, yes. I understand people go to Glen Park and they want their dogs to be able to sort of run around.
Yeah.
I do allow them to use that, but you also have to have control over your animal. Just because you have that leash doesn't mean you can just let him go wherever he wants and meet whatever dog he wants.
Sure.
And, you know, still be responsible about it.
So let's put the human factor in there and use your intelligence on what you
Yes,
should
common
and shouldn't
sense.
do.
Use your common sense.
That's interesting. In the case of I've got a short-haired pointer, for example, and when this guy runs, I used to take him down to some beach, which I'm not going to tell you where it is, because I don't do it anymore anyway. But when you see these dogs run and the enjoyment they get out of running really fast,
Right.
I mean, there's no way I could walk this guy on a
Oh,
leash
absolutely not.
and he'd get
You're
the
right.
same thing.
Yeah, you're right.
It just seems tragic to have to put him on a leash and
It
slow him
is.
down. I can't keep up with him. You know?
Right. I mean, and I totally understand that point of it, but there are other places in Rhode Island that you can take them that don't either don't have leash laws, or there's dog parks. It just happens that in Portsmouth right now, there's nowhere that they can run free.
Okay, well, Ariel, I'd like to thank you very much for being
Thank
on
you
the
for having
program.
me.
I think we could probably talk about this stuff for another half an hour, but
Probably.
we don't have time. And thank you all. Hope to see you next week on Portsmouth This Week. Doug Smith signing off.